I'm not Transfix, but let's see if we can fix this PlayStation 4 Pro. Hello and welcome back to Gears and Tech. As you heard in the intro, we have a PlayStation 4 Pro and something is wrong with it. This comes from one of our subscribers who had said that they were experiencing issues with this PlayStation 4 Pro, and they asked if I could help them out, and I said, sure, you know what, it'd make great content, because I think a lot of people are going to experience the sorts of issues that this particular PlayStation 4 Pro is suffering from, and that is a high fan speed, so it has the jet engine sound. So if you have a PlayStation 4 Pro that makes a jet engine sound, this is probably the fix for you. Or the secondary issue, this particular user actually pulled this apart when they had the jet engine sound. They had a look at everything, put it all back together, and then a week later they said they were gaming, they smelled a burning smell, and then the PlayStation beeped and shut off. Now it does still turn on, but it only stays on for about 10 minutes in the main menu before it shuts off again. Now, I personally think that what happened was the person who pulled it apart went all the way down to the processor and pulled the cooling pads off and disturbed the thermal paste, and now the system is overheating, like legitimately overheating. So we're gonna tear this down, we're gonna inspect for any kind of actual damage, and we're gonna see if we can fix it and get it to stay reliably running and hopefully without the jet engine sounds. So that's a lot to accomplish. We're gonna do this as like a Transfix or a Transfix, whatever his name is on YouTube, style of video. So I've got the top down view so you can see what I'm doing. We're gonna cut through, I'm gonna talk about each layer as we go. It's gonna be exciting for me, and you guys will probably be able to follow along and try to remedy your PlayStation at the same time. The reason this is so important is because I also put out a video like a year ago saying that the PlayStation 4 Pro has a ton of life left, and the number one complaint that I see in the comments from that video is that the jet engine sound is so annoying that the PlayStation 5 is worth it for getting rid of the jet engine sound all by itself, and that's the only good reason. So if you do this fix, you can get rid of the jet engine sound with the hardware that you have and make it last a little bit longer. So let's dig right into this. So we're gonna take the hard drive caddy out first. So we'll take that off, and we're gonna undo this PlayStation screw. Now they've already had this apart, so some of the screws might be missing. That is the PlayStation 4 Pro hard drive. Now normally there would be screws right here. There would be one there, there'd be one over here, and there'd be one right here. But because this was taken apart by a previous person, none of those screws are there, so we can just pull up gently right there, and then this just pops right off and it releases. So this front lip pulls off of there. So now we need to pull all these silver screws out, which is going to take a few minutes. It's going to pop those all out and then we'll come back. Now that we have all the screws out, we've got them in a pile here where we can lose them and forget which ones went in which order. The entire plate is clear. We've undone all of the clips. We've undone the antenna, and this top plate should come right off just like that, and it does. Before we can get any further on the bottom, we need to take the top cap off. So we're going to flip this back over, and this just comes off by pulling like that and like that. One of the easy things you can try to do before you do what we're doing here is pop the top off and clean out this fan, because it probably has a bunch of junk in it. This one's pretty clean now because the previous owner actually did do a pretty good job of blowing out all of the junk that was in there to make sure the fan was working as good as possible. But I don't think he popped this off, so it might be harder for me to get these loose. So this is the power supply and just a shield. So we'll take that off, and then we'll apply the sniff test to the power supply. So the power supply smells dusty, but that is about it. There is no burning smells in there at all. So normally you can smell an electronic burning smell. If this was getting hot, you'd smell it. It is dusty. I'll show you in the camera here. You can see the dust, and the connector on here seems to be intact and seems to be okay. No signs of heat there. There's some traces. We'll just put this over to the side. There's some traces right here. These are power connectors. What I'll probably do is try to clean those up before we put it back together. But this should free up this main motherboard now to come all the way off. So let's try this out. So we've decoupled the main board from the PlayStation body. Now we do have the Blu-ray drive here, which I'm not going to take out. We can sniff it if we want, but that was not the problem. So we'll throw that in a pile of parts here. This gets us to the actual processor with the cooling pipes. So we are going to split this. So we're going to take these screws here out, which hold the back. This is the back plate, obviously. We'll take them both off, even though we really shouldn't have to, but actually looks like the other one's stripped, so I guess we're not taking them both off. That will just expose the back plate and the shim that's on there. Now this one, I think I do need to take that out. Let's see if I've got a Phillips bit. There we go. Now this exposes the main board, and you can see our thermal paste definitely did not have good coverage. So let's talk about that first. This is one of those things where thermal paste gets old, thermal paste gets hot, and it is common to have to re-thermal paste stuff. So you can see here, if we look at this, you can see there's a spot right here where there was never any thermal paste at all. We can compare that to here, which is this area right here. No thermal paste at all on that part of the chip. So that would create hot spots. Depending on where the temperature sensor is on this chip, it could see a hot spot right there, which causes the fan to ramp up in temperature to try and get that one little spot cooler. We also see some spots right here that never ever had any thermal paste coverage at all and out in there. So it's no surprise. Now there's lots of goop here because it does flow out. That's normal. So what we're going to do, we're actually going to clean this up. We're going to clean that up, and then we're going to put it all back together with some new thermal paste. Now this is Arctic Silver thermal paste. It's not expensive. You can get it on Amazon. So I will put a link in the description where I got this, and you can use that if you want. You can use something else if you want. It doesn't matter to me. But we're also going to just check the rest of the board real quick while we're here, because it does look like this may have gotten a little bit warm. It shouldn't have, but we're just doing the sniff test. And I know people are laughing already. They're like, Anton, what an idiot. Who is this guy? Like, he's smelling the motherboard? But I'll tell you, my nose can detect burnt things. Got a little bit of extra residue there, which is interesting, but there's no obvious signs of liquid damage there. If I wanted to, I could reflow the solder joints on stuff like the RAM. I wouldn't try to reflow the processor, but I'm not going to do that because most of you aren't going to have that anyway. So the real big issue here was almost certainly that thermal paste. I know that when the guy pulled it apart, he did undo these screws and wiggled this around, realized that there was nothing under there, then put it back together. So that's why we're seeing this part here, like really, it's not wet anymore. Yeah, it's kind of moist, but we didn't have good coverage to start with, and then he disturbed it, so we lost the entire connection to it, is what I think happened. So let's get our cleaning pads and wipe this up. Now, if we want, we can get some isopropyl alcohol to really get this off, but all I'm mostly worried about is this chip right here. You want to get everything off of that chip. Everything else really doesn't matter. So you want it to be nice and shiny. You want to be able to see yourself in that chip. When you're done, clean it off. There's also still a layer of dust. What the heck? Let's get some alcohol. We'll just wipe the dust off of it. Now, when you're using alcohol, you need 99%. It is very easy to get the 75% stuff. The 75% means that it's still 25% water. Water is bad for electronics. This is 99% isopropyl alcohol. So what that means is most of it will evaporate off when, like, just naturally. So we can go like this. We can get our cloth damp with this stuff, and we can wipe anything we want on this electronic board because it'll evaporate. It'll all evaporate off. It also smells really great in a small room like what I'm in. You should use it only in a well-ventilated area. That's just flux. Like, it's not like nobody spilled their Coca-Cola on here. It shouldn't affect the performance of the system at all, but just for our purposes, we'll get it off. So there you can see that's off of there now. And we'll go like this. This side's looking good. The chip's been nice and cleaned like that. Now we're going to clean off this side as well. You want it to be as shiny as possible. So there we go. That's been cleaned. We're going to put our lid back on this before we forget about it so we don't make a mess. If I had thermal pads, I would replace these as well, but I do not. So we're going to hope that those will work like that. I'm going to fluff them up a little bit so that we get some good new adhesion. I'm going to figure out the orientation here because I don't want to have to do this twice. So I go like this and put this upside down, like that. I'm going to figure out the orientation, which will be like this, and then we can line up the holes and everything like that, just like that. We don't want to move it after it's been put on, so we want to just try to make sure we get this all lined up really well, and we know how it's going to go back together before we try to marry these together. So with that, it is time to put the thermal paste on. Now, I didn't have the cap on my thermal paste, so some of it's going to be kind of dry. So we're going to go like this and get the dry stuff out first. And then some guys put an X like that. I don't know. I subscribe to more is better, and I know that anything extra will squeeze out. If you're not certain, you can check it, but you'll have to apply some more. So we'll go like this. We'll slide that in like that. We'll go like this. Kind of line that all up. Push that down. Now, let's check it just for fun. We'll apply a little bit more after we check it, but so there, now you can see, look at all that paste I have. So here you can see I've got full coverage of the whole chip. Once it's screwed down, it's actually going to squish out even more than that. So I do not need to add any more. What I've added is sufficient. Screw that guy down. Now, we're not going to do it tight yet. We're going to do one side, and then we're going to do the other side. Here's the other side, sort of tight. We'll cinch that down the most. And that is a re-solder pasted processor. That gets tons of pressure on there. It gets our flow exactly how we want it. Now we can put the PlayStation back together and bench test it. So I'm not going to bore you guys with the reassembly. We're going to jump right to the assembled PlayStation. We'll boot it up and put it through a stress test and see how it does. Now, before we go all the way to the reassembly, you're going to have two types of screws here. You're going to have some big ones, and you're going to have the little ones, and you might not be sure which one goes where. So I will tell you, these big ones go into anything that is black plastic. So let's have a look here. So you can see this one right here is not black plastic. This guy right here is black plastic. So the black plastic ones are going to be these meaty kind of screws, and those will go in like that. And then the littler screws will go into anywhere where there's metal on metal. And that's because these little guys are a machine type screw, and they are a Phillips screw. So they use a different screw head. The most important of these two will be the machine screws because they hold the sandwich together. So we want to really do our best to hold the sandwich together. The ones that go into the black plastic, they hold the entire sandwich into the case. So if you're missing one or two, it's not the end of the world, is what I'm trying to say. It is important to get as many of these screws in as possible because the board actually grounds through this case. So like here you can see there's a little bit of circuit board there, a little bit of circuit board there. That's because this case is supposed to touch that and it creates a negative ground. It will act as a shield for frequency fluctuations, and it will prevent abnormal frequencies getting out. So like you would notice it if you had some of the old TVs were actually very sensitive to the frequencies that electronic circuits output. So this would block that. For those of you who are, interested in kind of geeky type stuff, it would be a Faraday cage. So those are known to block radio frequencies. Basically, the PlayStation is mounted inside its own Faraday cage, which blocks unwanted frequencies from the PlayStation as well as blocks the PlayStation from emitting unwanted frequencies. It also helps to make it resistant to surges of electricity. So if you're not using it on a power bar that has a surge protector, then this will help to dissipate high inrushes of electricity flow, such as if your house was hit by lightning, for example. Like that's an extreme case, but in some parts of the world, lightning strikes are frequent, and it would suck if your PlayStation burned up every time your house was hit by lightning. Also, in certain parts of the world, the power supply is not the most reliable, so you want to make sure that you're not going to burn up your PlayStation every time somebody turns the lights on outside or something like that. Okay, before I close it up, I do want to do one final sanity check. So what we're going to do is look to make sure that all of our ribbon cables are connected. We're going to make sure that they're tight, so we can just give them a little push in like that. Give them a wiggle. Even the ones we didn't take out, we'll give a little wiggle. This one here is a flip up style, so it's a locking one. So you got to make sure it's in all the way and then lock it down. So it is locked down. We've got our Wi-Fi antennas have been routed and they are solid on there, like that, like that. This one's got a little case that it clips into, like that, like that. Keep it out of the way. Everything looks good. Now we can put this cover back on and like that. Clip, 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 done. We still have the hard drive, which we will slide right back in, like that. And then we did keep the screw for the hard drive. Don't want that falling out or it will create problems for us. Just needs to be snug. And then this guy pops back on. The next thing we do is we boot it up. So let's get an HDMI cable here. So we're gonna go one more desk back and plug this in here. We'll turn it on. It does say that it's turning on. Now, for my PlayStation controller, I'm going to be using this. This is a Hori fighting stick that has selectable options between PS5, PS4, and PC. We'll switch it to PS4. Hopefully, this will boot right up. Connect the DualShock 4 using the USB cable. So we'll go like that. Press the PS button. This is not normally going to happen to you. What happens is, they actually pulled the hard drive out of this and stuck it in a different PlayStation and it got confused on the initialization. So we need to reinitialize the system software. So I'm going to do that step. I'm not going to show you guys. I will show you in a different video how to do this, but we're just going to set this up for now and I'll come back when it's actually running. We've got the Pro put all back together. It does power up. I've been running Astro's, I don't know, whatever this is, Playroom for a while now to try and get it good and warm. What I can say is that the PlayStation is definitely warm. I can feel the heat blowing off of the back here. I can feel like when I touch it, it is warm to the touch. However, it is still functioning just fine. It's been running now for about 30 minutes, which the user that sent this in said that it would freeze up and just lock up once you got, 15, 20 minutes of runtime onto it. Now, this is not the most graphic intensive game, but because I had to reload the software, it's the only game that I have on here right now that I don't have to install. So I'm going to leave this running for another couple hours just to be sure that it's working just fine. But at this point, I am saying that this PlayStation has been fixed with a basic solder paste replacement and a cleaning. So there was no long-term damage, no long-term effects, and it is good as new. I will be sending this back to the viewer to test more long-term than what I'm doing right here, but I can do more testing off camera just to make sure that it's good before it does get sent back. So you can follow along and do the exact same thing on yours, especially if you have that jet engine sound. This, it's warm, but I do not have a jet engine sound at this point, and it has not kicked into jet engine mode at all. So I believe that this has been fixed at this point. Hey, thanks for watching all the way to the end of this video. We hope you enjoy the content in this video and we'd love to have you come back. Consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And for those subscribers who are looking for that extra special thing that you can do to support this channel, consider joining our members group. That's where we're building this community, the Gears and Tech community, where we can all enjoy content together. You'll get special perks, which we'd love for you to check out by clicking the link down below. For those of you who are just happy to watch the video, that's okay too. You can check out some of our other content right over here, where we've got some previous videos that have already been uploaded and enjoyed by many of our viewers already. We do hope to see you again. This has been Gears and Tech. Have a great day.